Hello everyone, welcome back to Homestead in Bloom. Today we are going to be making a ton of freezer meal recipes to get ready for this sweet little baby that is about to be joining our family. So the very first recipe we are starting with today is a zuppa toscana, and I love this soup. It is probably one of my favorite soups of all time. So I'm excited to share how I make this with you. There are so many recipes for this on Pinterest. You can really find recipes that suit your dietary needs. I know that I did Whole30 a couple years back, and I was able to follow a Whole30 recipe, and that's kind of the recipe that I'm doing today, where it's, dairy free and just, you're using, bacon that doesn't have sugar and, all of those things. So this is just a super easy go-to meal, and it's so sweet. I made this for my husband when we were still, I think we were engaged, but I made it while I was on Whole30, and he just thought that it was so delicious. And it's really funny because I think it was probably like a week later, he came home came over from town, and he had brought me a little bowl of zuppa toscana from Olive Garden, thinking that it was Whole30 approved at Olive Garden as well. It's definitely not there. They definitely use all of the good things in their version, but it made my heart so happy that he thought that my soup was so delicious that he just assumed the Olive Garden version was Whole30 as well. So he's such a sweetheart. But anyways, here you see I am just cutting up this bacon. I got the onion diced up and ready to go, so I'm just going to be dicing up this bacon and getting it ready as well. You can see here that I divided it into 2 pots just to make it easy that way. After I got the bacon cooked, I removed it and put it onto a plate with some paper towel on there, and then I added in the Italian sausage. So sometimes I will just do regular sausage. We go to a dairy nearby and they sell just plain sausage, and so I'll normally buy that and season it myself. However, with all of the meal prep that I was planning on doing, I figured I would save myself a step, and I just bought the pre-seasoned Italian sausage this time. So I removed that from the pot and added that to a bowl with some paper towel in it, and had to get a spoon just to be a little bit more make it a little bit faster. And then I added in half of this onion to one of them, and then I added the rest of the onion to the other side, and I just let that cook until it got translucent. Then I added in some garlic. Garlic is just so delicious, and it's so healthy for you. So you can see I added in quite a bit of garlic. Like I said, the flavor is just so good. Typically, I'll do fresh garlic and I'll use my mincer. However, whenever I was buying for all of this cooking, I just grabbed a big thing of minced garlic that is just already done to make it easy. Next, I added in some of the potatoes from earlier, some pepper just to taste. This is the part of cooking where I really don't measure a lot of things. There I just added in some salt. I just kind of eyeball it. I feel like with baking, you really have to be super precise, but in cooking, you really just have more like freedom to kind of just do what feels right. And so most of the time whenever I'm cooking, I just kind of season with my heart. Here I added in some chicken bone broth. This is so good for your gut, and especially postpartum. I really want to make sure that I am nourishing my body and providing healing foods for postpartum. Next, I'm just cleaning as I go. I really try to keep the kitchen organized when I'm doing a big meal prep like this. It just makes it so much easier to clean as you go. So now you can see I'm adding in the bacon back to the soup, and then in just a second I'll add the Italian sausage back in as well and just start mixing it all together. And at this point it's time to add in some more spices. So I'll link a recipe in the description box below for you to follow if you're interested. But like I said, I kind of just season with my heart. So you won't really see me measuring a whole lot. You'll just see me showing you what it is that I'm using and just dumping it in there. So I really love using these red chili flakes. They are so delicious. It adds like the perfect amount of spice to any recipe. You see me adding in without just making it way too hot. I was supposed to just add the cream from the top of the coconut or the can of coconut cream, but I added a little bit of the coconut milk as well. And then here I am just going to be pulling off the kale, giving it a good rinse, and adding it to our soup. I like to pull it apart into little bite-sized pieces and then put it into the soup. That way, as it wilts down, the pieces aren't too big and they cook down really nicely. So once I put it in the soup, I just let the soup kind of steam with the lid on and just wilt that kale, and then it was ready to enjoy for dinner that night. This next recipe I'm making is a Mongolian beef recipe, and it just starts off by shredding up some carrot. So I washed our carrots and then I peeled them and then just got our shredder and shredded up the carrot to get that consistency that we were looking for. And then I got a big roast from, actually I believe those were flank steaks. I had gotten those at Sam's earlier. If y'all saw the video before this, I did the haul of everything I got at Sam's, and yeah, these steaks were just beautiful, and I sliced them in a longer lengthwise cut and just added it to a bowl. And I was measuring out the steak just to make sure that I was putting around an equal amount in each bag, and that way I can get several servings out of the one package of meat. I was just really trying to stretch this as far as I could. Originally I was planning on making 2 servings of this, but I realized that I would actually be able to get 3 servings. So here you can see that I'm adding some pepper and salt to the bags, and then I'm also adding in, I think it was a half a cup of the carrot. Actually, that looks like it was a full cup. Yeah, a full cup of that shredded carrot. And then I'm also going to be using coconut aminos in this recipe. If you have never tried coconut aminos, oh my goodness, you are missing out. But first I'm going to add some coconut sugar. Coconut sugar is also something that if you have never tried it, you definitely need to. It is so delicious, and it is a great alternative for, cane sugar or brown sugar or anything like that. I'm also going to be putting in a little bit of apple cider vinegar. I used the Bragg's one. I've seen a lot of people are switching recently. Apparently Bragg's was bought out by another company and the quality has gone down, so something to keep in mind. Then I added in a lot of garlic. You'll see a trend in all of these recipes. They all contain lots of garlic because, like I said, it's just really healthy for you. This is that coconut aminos that I was talking about. I get mine from Thrive Market. They are so delicious. And then I'm going to be adding in some bone broth to each one of the bags. And spoiler alert, I have already eaten one of these and it was so delicious. It is a little bit on the sparse side considering I split it into 3, but I also made rice with it and that kind of just helps it go a little bit further. And then I also roasted some veggies with them. This next recipe is an Italian meatball soup. I saw these meatballs at Costco and I just wanted to try them and see how they were. I had been planning on making this Italian meatball soup anyways. It's actually a southwestern meatball soup, so we're adding in some cumin to give some of that southwestern flavor. But yeah, I saw these at Costco and I thought they would be perfect for obviously this meatball soup, but also just to have as a very easy protein source for postpartum. So I added in some corn as well. I was kind of running out of corn, and so you can see I'm just splitting it up. In a perfect world, I would have had more, but we're just making do with what we have. And then I'm adding in some diced tomatoes, and I believe these have some green chilies. Yeah, that's Rotel. And then I'm adding in some black beans that I had rinsed, and next I'm going to be adding in some spinach that I chopped up. I had frozen this spinach, honestly, probably a couple months back, just because it was about to go bad, and so I just threw it all into a little gallon bag, and I'm so glad I did because the spinach held up very well, and it froze really beautifully too. So I hadn't let it completely defrost, but it did pretty good, refreezing at least. So after that, I added in some onion to both of the bags, and then the last thing was to add some chicken broth to the bags as well. So some recipes you don't freeze with the broth. I tend to like freezing my soups with the broth already inside of them, just because I feel like it is easier because everything is all together. I don't have to worry about whether or not I have the right broth that I need for the recipe. It's just all ready together, and then I can just sit it in a bowl in the fridge and it will defrost that way. And most of the time I just let it defrost a little bit, and then I will use the Instant Pot for heating it up. I just feel like during postpartum I just tend to gravitate more towards the Instant Pot because I don't know why, but I feel like I always forget to set the food out with enough time for it to completely defrost and use the crock pot. So yeah, the Instant Pot is just a game changer for postpartum, and it just makes everything much easier. And I'll have links to all of these recipes in the description box below, so just make sure to take a look and you'll find the recipes all located there. Next, we're making a slow cooker beef stew, and you can see here that I am dividing this stew meat into, I was just going to do 2 bags, but I actually had enough room to divide it into 3, so that was exciting. Just more meals to prep for postpartum. And then I went ahead and washed and peeled these carrots and then cut them into little rounds. And then I took all of those rounds and divided those into all of the bags that had the meat all in it already. I think I used around 6 carrots, if I'm not mistaken. I wanted this to be packed full of veggies, and so yeah, the more the more carrots, the better. This recipe includes balsamic vinegar, so I put a tablespoon of balsamic vinegar into each one, and if you haven't ever cooked with that before, I highly recommend you do so. It gives a delicious flavor to all of the different meals that you can make with it. Next, I used some tomato paste and added that to each one of the bags. Then I used some Italian seasoning and added that in as well. And I really like these beef stew recipes because I feel like you just have the freedom to kind of play with it and do whatever seasonings you want. So I did that. I did some pink Himalayan sea salt, pepper, garlic, kind of the basic things, and that's it. I went ahead and zipped these up without adding the potatoes because potatoes tend to freeze kind of sketchy sometimes. So I decided that I would just go and cut up the potatoes when it was time to make this meal versus trying to blanch them or, just try to keep them from getting too soggy. So that's what I did for that meal. And this next meal is a beef and broccoli meal. And beef and broccoli is hands down one of my absolute favorite freezer meals to do. Funny story, I actually made beef and broccoli freezer meals for my 3 friends that were pregnant at the same time as me. And I accidentally put the broccoli in with the beef and broccoli in the freezer bag, and I definitely don't recommend doing that because the broccoli turned to mush. It was still delicious, the flavor was still there, but it was just very mushy. So you can see here I'm doing 3 servings. I was stretching that meat to go a little bit further, and then I added in some onion as well as a lot of garlic. And then I'm also doing some ground ginger here, and this is just, it's gonna add that delicious flavor to it, as well as some toasted sesame oil. This is also something that just really adds some depth of flavor to like those Asian inspired dishes, and so I highly recommend using this. And then we're going back with the coconut sugar. This is just one of my go-tos because, like I said, you're just replacing cane sugar with it, so it's much healthier. And then we've got a rice vinegar. This is just going to add a little bit of that tang that you're looking for in a beef and broccoli. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We also are going to be using some coconut aminos, and I was actually running out of coconut aminos, so I had to do, I think it was half of what the recipe called for. And I know for a fact that it turned out good because I've already had one of these. And so yeah, the recipe calls for more, but you can get away with doing half. But the more coconut aminos you have, honestly, the better. The flavor is just so good. So anyways, yeah, that was all 3 of those beef and broccoli meals. And you can see whenever I'm zipping these up, I don't have like a thing to suck all of the air out, so I just do my best to press the air out of it and kind of mix together the ingredients on the inside, and then I like to try to lay it a little flat. That way they can stack well on top of each other in the freezer. Y'all, I was not kidding whenever I said I was going to be going hard with this meal prep. I feel like we've made so many meals already, and this video is definitely not done yet. This meal that we're making right now is a veggie loaded beef stew, and so I'm starting out with just cutting up some of these celeries and getting them all prepped and ready to be divided into each of the meals. And then the next veggie that we're adding is a zucchini. I think I did 2 or 3 zucchinis for this. And I'm just adding that into another bowl, a separate bowl. That way we can add all of them to their different bags later on. Since we're not just doing one of these meals, I really like to make at least 2 of each one that I do. But like I said earlier with like the beef and broccoli meals, if it's possible for me to stretch it even further, I'm always going to try to do that. So you can see here I'm just cutting up some more zucchinis. I must have done 4 for this recipe then, because I tend to cut 2 at a time. So I guess I did 4, and yeah, I just cut them into fairly thin pieces, and then I just cut those pieces in half. Next, you guessed it, we've got more carrots. So you can see here I did quite a few carrots. I think I see 2, 4, 6, I probably did around 8 or 9 carrots. And you can see here that I am putting them into each bowl. So I decided instead of doing zucchini and then celery in the other bowl, I was just going to go ahead and put the veggies into the bowl and then transfer the bowl of food into the gallon bag. So that just made it a little bit easier for this recipe, at least, just because it is a veggie loaded beef stew, so there were quite a few veggies to cut up and get prepared. Moving on to the meat, I decided to cut this meat up into smaller pieces. That way the roast was just more bite-sized once it was cooked. The roast is going to be super tender once it's cooked as well, but it's just nice to have it into those bite-sized pieces just to make the cook time a little bit shorter, and you don't have to shred it as much once it's cooked. You can see here that I added the meat to the gallon bag, and then I added all of the veggies on top. Once I got all the veggies in there, I added in our diced tomatoes, and that was it. So I just zipped it up and tried to get all of the air out that I could, and it was ready for the freezer. This lemon garlic chicken I hesitate to even share because it truly is just so easy. I just put some garlic into the bag, and then I added in some parsley. I didn't measure, I just kind of poured it in, and after that I squirted some lemon juice in there, added a little bit of olive oil, and that was it for this recipe. It's really nice to just have protein sources in the freezer that you can heat up and put this on top of a salad, or we could top it, or we could put it on top of rice, and just add some veggies. So it's just really nice to have a flavorful and easy thing to heat up in the fridge. For this next recipe, we're going to be making some carnitas using this pork shoulder roast. So you can see here, I am just cutting it into different pieces and putting it into the gallon bag to go ahead and start filling it with all of the ingredients we need. So I did the first roast and then I cut up the second one too. And the first thing we're adding is some ground cumin. So I just sprinkled that on top of each one, and you can see I ran out. Luckily my Thrive Market order had come in, and so I had some extra ground cumin ready to go, which is always so nice. I love how Thrive Market sends all of their seasonings in these bags. It just makes it super quick and easy, and honestly I think I prefer it over having the actual seasoning jar or spice jar. Then I added some of this granulated garlic that I got from Sam's. I think I'm always gonna have to buy garlic in bulk like this because the price was great, and I use so much garlic powder in my cooking. I use so much garlic powder, salt, pepper. Like, those are just my go-to ingredients for pretty much seasoning anything. So yeah, I think I'm always going to be buying it in bulk now because it's just so nice. I feel like I would run out of garlic powder like literally a couple times a month. So this one will keep me full on garlic powder for a while. Next, I'm just going to be adding in some orange juice. This is kind of a special ingredient that really gives these carnitas a beautiful flavor. And I feel like just cooking them slow in the crock pot, it just really helps for all of these ingredients to just meld together and make the most delicious carnitas pork. So after I did that, I got a lime ready, and I'm going to add the juice of the lime. This lime was so hard for me to juice or to squeeze, so I had to call in for backup from my husband. So luckily he was home and he was able to come and just try to squeeze the juice out of this lime for me because I just could not get all of the juice out. So luckily he was here to help. Okay, I promise we're getting close to the end, guys. The next recipe I'm sharing is this creamy white chicken chili. So I just put some chicken breast in the bottom of the bag, and then I added in some white navy beans on top of that chicken breast, and then I added in some diced green chilies. I have just recently discovered that I love green chilies. I've started putting them in so many different recipes. They are just the perfect amount of spice and flavor. They are just so good. So I added those green chilies in, and then it was time to just sprinkle in some salt. For these chicken recipes that you'll see coming up, I really tried to stretch the chicken that I had left. So I only did 2 chicken breasts for these recipes. Here you can see I'm adding in quite a bit of pepper. But I only did 2 chicken breasts for these recipes, and like I said earlier, a lot of these recipes I'm gonna serve with, rice or pasta or something like that, just to kind of make it be a little bit more filling. So I feel like I can get away with doing less protein and maybe doing like a protein pasta to pair with it. So there you saw I added in some cumin to give it that nice flavor that we're looking for. And then I added in some of this dairy-free sour cream. So when I am postpartum, I try to not have any dairy just because my first little baby had a sensitivity to cow's milk. And honestly, I have a sensitivity to cow's milk when I'm not pregnant. So when I'm pregnant, I can have it. It's very strange. I can have gluten and I can have dairy when I'm pregnant, but as soon as I'm not pregnant again, it starts to give me problems. So anyways, I do no dairy when I am not pregnant for myself as well as my babies, because my first one really did struggle with it. It gave her lots of reflux, and so I just like to kind of preventatively go ahead and take the dairy out of my diet just in case, because a baby with reflux is no fun. So next you saw I added in the chicken broth, and then I would just squeezed all of the air I could out of the bag and kind of gave it a little mix, and it was ready for the freezer. And here we are making our second to last freezer meal, and it is a chicken taco soup. So like I said, I was really stretching the chicken that we had out, and so there's not a whole lot of chicken in these bags, but I went ahead and added quite a bit of garlic to each one of the bags, and then I added in some pink Himalayan sea salt to each bag, as well as some pepper just to give it a little bit of spice, and some ground cumin just to add that nice taco flavor that you're looking for in a taco soup. And then I also added some oregano to each one of these bags as well, so that just gives it a nice little flavor. Next I added in some washed or rinsed pinto beans to each one of the bags, and then I added in a little bit of olive oil, a whole carton of chicken broth, and then some diced tomatoes, and this recipe was all done. And last but not least, we are finally at our last recipe. Oh my goodness, I feel so ready for postpartum because we truly made so many meals. But this last meal is a chicken tortilla soup. So I started out with 2 chicken breasts in each one of these bags, and then I added in some minced garlic, of course, to each one of the bags. And after that, I put in a little bit of salt just to, give it that nice flavor, but also it's so good to cook with salt because your body definitely needs it. And I love the pink Himalayan sea salt specifically because it's got so many minerals, and postpartum, I really want to make sure that I am stocking up on those minerals and trying to stay hydrated as possible for breastfeeding. So after that, I added in some of this oregano just to give it that nice flavor. And I of course had to go in with some garlic powder and cumin to give it that nice taco flavor that we're looking for with a chicken tortilla soup. And I added in some drained and rinsed black beans, and then some coconut milk from one of the cans of coconut that we had opened earlier for a recipe before. So I like to use the classic coconut milk and just kind of scrape the cream off of the top and scoop it into our bag. Lastly, it was time to add in a whole carton of this chicken broth, and then it was just time to get the air out of the bag, seal it, and add it with our other freezer meals that we've prepped. So we worked really hard. We got so many meals made. I am just so excited, and there's truly nothing better than having a fully stocked freezer whenever you have a precious new baby in your family that you just want to snuggle and love on. So this is going to be a huge blessing, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much.